John Wesley, you know him. He was a student of the emerging industrial economy in England in the 18th century, and he studied industrial operation and its impact on individuals. And he watched and he complained as grain was diverted from bread to the production of alcohol. And he and his brother Charles complained to the public authorities about inadequate wages and insufficient economic safety nets and the contamination of water and air and soil. Doesn't that sound familiar? Wesley would likely be an advocate of the Green Revolution. He railed against exploitation and dispossession of the poor by the industrialists and the merchants and the doctors and the lawyers. He lambasted colonialism and the slave trade. Concern for the poor became a sort of litmus test for Methodist social witness. And he complained so long and so loud that his protests were one reason he was denied permission to preach in Anglican pulpits. Early Methodist services for the poor consisted primarily of alms, some raised by begging in the streets. As the movement grew, Wesley organized the Strangers Society for the relief of the poor and the sick and the friendless beyond the Methodist bounds. It did not take long for the Methodists to realize that more than acts of charity were necessary to provide for the needs of the poor among themselves and the larger society. More than acts of charity included in Wesley's times, in the 1700s, employment for the poor, especially in sewing collectives, loans enabling the poor to acquire tools and materials for small businesses, free health care, poor houses for destitute widows and children, set up so that Wesley and other Methodist preachers could also live among the poor, thereby maintaining solidarity with them, and schools for children of poor preachers. We come from a very, very deep understanding of our relationship with the poor. It was fascinating to me as I did some research on Wesley that we really are in the same place with a different spin, but the same place. And I wonder, you know, we've all heard what he said, gain all you can, save all you can, give all you can, and that was Wesley's view of money. But he didn't believe Christians should accumulate surplus wealth while some didn't have the necessities and others are in extremities. Wesley found that message hard to sell. How would it be received by us today? Gain all you can, save all you can, give all you can. Honk. Do what you can do. I have a DVD here of a church in Rhode Island that I just loved. It's called Lost in Woonsocket. Have any of you heard of it? It says you'll never look at strangers the same way again. It's about a United Methodist church in Rhode Island. They were down to 7 elderly members. Does that sound familiar of any of our churches occasionally? And they were in downtown Woonsocket, which I guess is a bigger city than it sounds. And they were right in the midst of the homeless population, and they just began to do something about the homeless. They just began to open their doors. And then they just began to feed them, and then they just began to connect up with other partners. And this church of 7 now includes worship services primarily for the homeless. They just did what they saw in front of them. They just saw the people that needed them, and they suspended their concern about their building, and they suspended their concern about what used to be, and they just did the work. The possibilities for us in the church, we are privileged to have among and around us and within us the resources we need to do to make a difference in this world, and to make a difference for the most marginalized and the most vulnerable. I hope as we leave this place, we'll remember to look under that bridge that somebody talked about. And we'll remember to maybe go to the grocery store in the middle of the night and see if there's something we can do to help. Little, small, big, large, it doesn't matter. If this is going to be truly accomplished, the elimination of poverty, there's only one way to do it. And that's one step after another step after another step. So God bless us all as we work on this daunting task of the 21st century, which was also apparently the daunting task of the 18th century. Help us learn from what we have seen and move into the future with a modicum and a bucket load of hope. Thanks be to God.